Aujourd'hui, je vais parler de why I'm still hanging on to my PlayStation 4 instead of upgrading to PlayStation 5 and what might actually change my mind in the year 2025. Oh my goodness. Hey, Zempak here. So obviously I am a fan of, video games simply because it's an easily existing framework to create a simulation of obstacles for us human beings to overcome and thus feel a sense of accomplishment. Okay, woof, that sentence sounded a bit stilted, I realize, but consider what I'm actually saying and tell me if it's untrue. Okay, we make up competition and frameworks for accomplishments for ourselves all the time. Okay, for example, any New Year's resolution anybody makes. The only difference is video games makes these criteria common and gives a hopefully well-balanced world to explore with it. So, being a lifetime fan of the genre, why is it that I've still not upgraded to the latest generation of consoles? Let's be honest, okay? Microsoft has more or less heated the space of consoles by this year, 2025. So I'm gonna ignore, that half of the equation, right? No hate on those. I've had an Xbox a couple of years ago, but they've just simply changed their strategy in this space. So from this point forward for peak gaming, the choice is simply PlayStation 5 from Sony, or really a well-built home PC, or at least high-end-ish, right? That is, if I'm interested in the latest that the video game industry has to offer in terms of graphics, at least, okay? So this isn't really about console gaming versus PC gaming, rather just a personal perspective as to why I'm at where I'm at, okay? To be clear, I have a Nintendo Switch, I have a PlayStation 4, and a Steam Deck, so definitely not a loyalist towards anybody, okay, by any measure. But we're well within the mid-cycle era of the PlayStations, right? If you measure it by console gaming. We know this because the PlayStation 5, their Pro version came out already. And even if I do end up buying a PlayStation 5 now, no one would ever think I've been a fanboy, because, far from day one. So, if you enjoy some random rants from a dude with clearly no production skills, like, subscribe, share, comment, or whatever, okay? I will be great because I just do these for funsies. Hit that bell icon. I still don't know what that is, but I'm asking you guys to do that because I hear other YouTubers say that. Okay, whatever. So first, let's get this whole PC gaming versus console gaming reason out of the way. Like, why I don't think it's really much of a battle, okay? Honestly, these days, all consoles are kind of more like PC gamings than ever. You can buy games digitally, your console now needs constant updates, basically an internet connection. Or at least that's what it feels like. A storage space totally becomes an issue at this point due to these previous reasons, even on consoles, right? At the same time, on the PC side, as example by such devices such as the Steam Deck, it's actually easier than ever to have a reasonably clean UI and a streamlined experience that's designed to get you into gaming instead of all the hoops one normally associates with PC gaming. Of course, the two sides aren't still entirely the same, okay? Like if you are real min-maxer about frame rates and graphics, you can still only do that on the PC side. But the cost is also exponentially higher, okay? It's pretty easy to find custom home-built PCs that can run into like a couple of $1,000s at a base, okay? Sure, you can argue that PC is not limited to just gaming, but the reality is that for most people, the most graphically and CPU-intensive tasks that they subject their machines to is video games, okay? So sure, maybe you have a $5,000 PC that could do a lot more than play games, but hardly anyone does, okay? So making use of those potentials is usually a moot point. So if I really think about it, if I'm paying $500 for a PS5, it's really a pretty much way better value than any PC that could perform even remotely similarly, because the PCs are most likely at least double, or even not, if not a lot more expensive for what, like a mild graphical upgrade? Like, who cares? Now, let's get into the weeds of why a lifetime PlayStation fan like me haven't actually upgraded my PlayStations, okay? I have bought literally every single PlayStation that has ever come out, to be fair. Okay, PlayStation 5, though, did come out during COVID, had supply issues right off the bat, so it really doesn't feel like it's been out for 5 years, more like 3 if we ignore the first 2 COVID years. Still, 3 years isn't nothing, and it's not like I'm pressed for resources these days, and yet, honestly, I think one good reason I haven't moved on since the past generation is because that PS4 has just really lasted quite a while, longer than I thought it would. Okay, I thought it was like on the verge of death like 5 years ago. This machine, okay, but my single PlayStation, regular one, not like a Pro version, has been chugging along despite having crashed more than any other console I've ever had. Okay, so I guess the surprising resilience of the PlayStation is the reason why I haven't upgraded. Because if it did die, I probably would replace it with a next gen ranking. Okay. Now the other big, poster child reason for not upgrading to PS5 is simply because there's just not a lot of must-have games for me. Okay, not none, just very few. Okay, maybe it's because I'm an old-fashioned gamer. Okay, just having gorgeous graphics does not move the dial for me anymore. Okay, so the only thing I can think of that's a PlayStation exclusive is the Final Fantasy VII Remake series, and that's a game that I've already played. Okay, one other game actually requires a PS5. I mean, it just doesn't seem to be the case for the PlayStation 5 generation, even 5 years in. Okay, so I'm happy enough that most of these Sony exclusives are only that way for a little bit, and they will come out on other platforms as well, so less of a reason to go all in on PlayStations, right? Now, what might change my mind if my mind isn't just limited to the very few Sony exclusive? And that leads me to my final point, okay? That is, will I simply skip PlayStation 5 entirely? And I think the answer for me is actually now leaning towards not likely. The reality is that as an old gamer, I just don't have the resolve to get new games on the day of release these days, okay? It's actually similar to how I treat all media, including TV shows, because right now, I don't care to be the first in line. I don't have a lot of people to talk about, video games or TV shows with, okay? And I think great art ages better than mediocre effort. So it really doesn't matter when I enjoy it, especially since I'm retired and have a ton of time, right? So, are there newer graphically intensive games that only a PS5 can handle that I'd like to play? Sure. But it doesn't have to be specifically this month or this year or even next year, okay? Now, I think I might possibly upgrade simply to play like Baldur's Gate 3, okay? Because I got that itch. That is my example game because that's never been a Sony exclusive. It's really made for like PCs, right? But in order to play that game, my choices are either PS5 for $500 or a custom PC for like a lot more. And I just can't justify the non-frugal option. Yeah, I mean, that sounds absurd. Would I play $500 for essentially a handful of games? Sure. It might still be considered a splurge, but relatively it's also an act of reality if I'm not upgrading to a brand new PC. It is really all relative, isn't it? So in conclusion, I'm actually a little sad by the state of the PlayStation, because 5 years after PlayStation 5, was introduced and came out, at least for old-timey gamers like myself, there's hardly a compelling reason to upgrade, okay? Sure, maybe it's because Sony made these PlayStations too reliable, which is a bit ironic. Kind of reminds me of how like Instapot was all the rage for a while and everybody was buying one, but then those things last forever, so no family would ever need to make, to buy more than one of them, like per lifetime. But now, tangent aside, right? I look at PlayStations not as something special in and of itself anymore, right? But simply as a cheap way to play PC games, at least for the next handful of years, okay? Now, I get it. Some people might be like, but that means you're going to have to buy a console every, 6 or whatever years, right? But let me be clear. I've already had the PlayStation 4 for, almost 10 years. So if I buy a PlayStation 5, I expect it to almost last just as long, okay? And I know for me, it's very, very unlikely that I will be changing a PC well within a decade as well, okay? So it is still a good value, I think, in terms of PlayStation 5 as a PC equivalent if your use case is only in, video gaming and graphics. So how about you guys? Have you given up on console gaming yet? Or is it full steam ahead and I'm just way behind the times? Could be, both could be true. Cheers. A la protion.